That's a tough act to follow there, brother. I love that song. What was the name of it again? Okay, I'm going to look that up as soon as I get home. My wife sings too. She'll love that. I sure do. Pastor Todd asked me to share a little bit about myself. I'm not Al, as y'all can see. Al's a good fella. We love him. Works hard for the Lord. And I've never met anybody quite like him. And he'll do anything for you. He'll bend over backwards. He knows all these preachers around here, knows their name. And I told him, I said, Al, as much as you like chicken, you should have been a pastor. Because he loves chicken. Anyway, my name is Bob. Last name is Lough. Live down in the big town of Gibsonville. I've been there about 22 years. My wife, Patsy, and I. We were born and raised, both of us, up in a coal mining town in southern West Virginia called War, W-A-R, War, West Virginia. Worked in the coal mines there 10 years. Hard work. Then I got into teaching. That's even harder work. Taught fifth grade down at Gibsonville and retired down there several years ago. But anyhow, been here 22 years. My wife has a plaque on the wall, and it says, I wasn't born in North Carolina, but I got here as fast as I could. She said, I'm not going back up to those mountains dead or alive. She sold her grave plots to one of her friends, so she's not going back, that's for sure. We grew up poor up there in those mountains, but I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. Didn't have running water in the house. My mama would get a pan and lye soap and wash us off during the week, and then on weekends we'd get a big tub out, fill it with creek water, build a fire under it, and she'd stick us in there. The first time that happened to me, I thought they were boiling me for supper. Because up in those coal fields, there's coal dust everywhere, and it gets all over you, and I told somebody I was 14 years old before I realized I was a white man. But anyhow, the way I became a Gideon about 10 years ago, we were up there in grade school, and I think I was in the 4th or 5th grade. I don't remember, but two men showed up on the playground. They had black suits on, white shirt, black tie, black shoes, and black hats. And I asked somebody, I said, who are those guys? I thought maybe they were, alcohol and tobacco people looking for those moonshiners. I was real suspicious of them. They said, no, those are Gideons. I said, well, what is a Gideon? And they said, well, they're Christian men, and they give out free Bibles. Well, my friends and I, we kind of made fun of them because of the way they were dressed, and I shied away from them, and I wouldn't take one of their Bibles. You know what? That's bothered me for years, the way I treated those men. And about 10 years ago at our church, one of my friends came in. He had a little pin on his jacket, and I asked him. I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's a Gideon pin." I said, "Are you a Gideon?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how do you become a Gideon?" He said, well, first of all, you got to be a born-again Christian. You got to be a member of a church, a professional and businessman, and you have to be recommended by your pastor. Well, the Lord spoke to me, and he said, here's your chance to make up for what you did and how you treated those fellows. Over 60 years ago, that happened. And I said, well, okay. I said, if my pastor will recommend me, I'll do it. And guess what? He recommended me, and here I am. Been going around for the last 10 years speaking to churches and met a lot of good people. God's blessed me more in those past 10 years doing this than the whole time that I've been a Christian. It's kind of funny. I was you talked about taking up offerings and stuff for the Gideons. I was at a little church up in Wentworth, maybe 20, 25 people there. And they took the offering up, and one of the ushers handed the pastor a note, and he looked at it, and he got up and he said, listen, folks, we didn't get enough money in this offering to pay the light bill, so we're going to pass the plate again, and I want you to dig deep. And he said, as a matter of fact, whoever gives the most money will get to come up here and pick 3 hymns. So they passed it. This little lady, about 80 years old, called her by name. Her name was Sister Barton, said she gave the most money. Said, come on up here, sister, and pick out 3 hymns. So she made her way up to the front of the church. She got up there and she said, I'll take hymn, hymn, and hymn. I never will forget that. She didn't point at me, by the way. Anyhow, as this man, as he stepped out of the room, he hung his head, and he said, you need to go home. Well, Linda had agreed to join an all-girls gang at her local high school. They persuaded her to do it. And her initiation into this gang was to have an affair with a married man. And she agreed to do it. So she goes on her computer to a website, Women Seeking Men, and has no trouble making a date with a man that he said he was married, and agreed to meet him at a local motel right outside of town. She got there first. She goes in. She's really nervous. She's frightened. She's afraid. She's pacing back and forth in the room there, thinking about what in the world have I got myself into, and thinking about going home. And she looks over on the nightstand and she spots a Gideon Bible. She sits down on the bed and she opens it up. Well, about that same time, she hears this man letting himself into the room. And he steps inside, and what he sees shocks him. Here's a pretty, blue-eyed, blonde little girl sitting on the bed with an open Bible on her lap. Now, I don't know what he's thinking. You've seen that program where they catch these guys trying to pick up girls. Maybe that's what he was thinking. But whatever, God stopped him dead in his tracks. And as he turned to leave, he hung his head and he said, you need to go home. Well, Linda goes home. She told her parents what she had set out to do. They put their arms around each other. They had a good cry and then a good prayer. And then she rededicated her life to the Lord. You see, they had taken her to church all of her life. And she had accepted Jesus. But she had fallen away and drifted away and almost got into some serious problems. Well, the amazing thing about this testimony is that Linda's dad is a Gideon, and he had helped place Bibles in that motel. And there's a good possibility that that Bible that she had on her lap was one that stopped that man in his tracks. Listen, people, God's word will not return void. The Gideons have been placing Bibles in hotels and motels for over 100 years. We put them in hospitals, Bibles just like this one, hospitals, airports, train stations, doctors' offices, healthcare facilities. We don't care. We'll put one wherever we think somebody will pick it up. And if they take it with them, that's fine too. We don't care. We'll replace it. We also give out the New Testaments like this one. And by the way, the different colors depends on who we'll give them to. We give these to school children and kids in school where they'll let us. It contains the Psalms and the Proverbs also. We give them to police officers, men and women in the military, nurses. Again, anybody will take one, we'll give it to them free of charge. In that 100 years, we have placed over 2 billion of God's Word. 2 billion. I have no idea how many that is. I don't know what a billion is, but over 2 billion have been placed. 2 businessmen started this ministry in 1908. Today, God has blessed it. We're established in 200 countries plus. and translate God's Word into 100 different languages. You know, we receive hundreds of emails, phone calls, letters of people that are thanking us, testifying to the fact that they found the Bible. That Bible literally saved their lives. We've had people call and tell us that they go to a hotel to commit suicide and find that Bible, and it turns their lives around, and so we appreciate that. Two Gideons were down in Memphis, Tennessee, and they were outside of an elementary school handing out testaments just like this one to kids as they were coming to school. And the principal, she's in her office, and she looks out there and sees these two guys, and she goes crazy. She picks up the phone, calls the police, comes running out of the building, screaming at the kids not to take them, and actually took some of the testaments away from some of the kids. And the police arrived, and they told her, they said, "Look, lady, these men are on a public sidewalk. They have every right to be here." And they agreed to leave. They saw how upset she was, and there's the red lights going around and around, and they didn't want to cause any controversy, so they packed up their testaments and they left. Well, about 2 months later, one of the kids there was late for school. He runs across the street, and a school bus hits him, and he dies a few days later in the hospital. Well, at the funeral, of course, the principal and his teachers and others were at the funeral, and anyway, the mother got up, and she holds up a little testament like this one, and she says, "We were going through our son's book bag, and we found this little Gideon testament," and she says, "We don't know where he got it. We don't know who gave it to him. But," she says, "in the back there's a place where he testifies that he had read it and that Jesus had saved him and had given his life to the Lord." She said, "You have no clue what that means to me and my family." Now, I don't know what that principal was thinking or what she thought, but I hope she was thinking, "I'm glad I didn't take that testimony away from that child." So again, God's word will not return void. You know, it cost us $5 to print this Bible, $1.35 for the testaments, and for $135 we can send a case of these to any one of those 200 countries in the world. Me and a friend, we work for, I don't know if you all know Miss Tina Corey. She owns about 5,000 acres of land up in Person County, and we take care of it for her. But anyhow, I was up there the other day, me and my buddy, and we went to a little restaurant up there, and I got 2 fried bologna sandwiches and 2 iced teas, and it cost me $18. $18. I should have looked at the menu, but I didn't. But I thought, we just ate 3 Bibles and 3 New Testaments for lunch. But you think about that, what it means. I'm in the Alamance West camp, and we take care of the western Alamance County. Have 123 churches, and some of those churches are big churches. They have budgets. One of them I know has a budget of $3 million. But this church is the #1 church. You give more money than any of those other churches. This church right here. I said, when Al told me how much you gave last year, I said, "Lord, Al," I said, "I've never spoken in a church that big." He said, "It's not a big church." And I said, "All right." But we appreciate that. God will bless you for it. I know He will. He sure will. In closing, let me remind you about our Gideon card program. I think you have a rack back there. Cards for all occasions. You can, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, whatever. It's a great way to remember someone and to honor someone. I know I bought my wife a card. She got mad at me. I paid $7 for it at CVS. And she looked at it and she said, "I appreciate the card, but next time go to Walmart or go to the dollar store, get me a dollar card and put $6 in it." and give it to me. I said, okay. I said, that is a deal, and I'll do it. But anyway, appreciate you so much. One of the ladies said that y'all been having church outside. I said, that'd be hard for me because I'm a hunter and a fisherman, and I love being outside, and it'd be hard for me to concentrate on what Brother Todd be preaching. And my wife fusses at me sometimes. I'll miss church and go, and she said, you ought to be ashamed. I said, listen, I'd rather be up in my tree stand thinking about God than in that pew thinking about that tree stand. He said, I guess you got a point. Pray for our churches. This COVID thing is really hurting them. Financially, I don't know about this church, but they're struggling with it. So pray for them that this thing will get out of here. My brother and sister and I, we lost our mother to COVID 2 months ago. 90 years old. She was living at home, taking care of herself, cooking for us, fussing at us, and everything else, and put her on a ventilator. And we had to make a decision to take her off of it. And it was a hard thing to do. So it's a serious thing. God bless you. Thank you, brother.